Liberia, Liberia. For Liberia, yeah, 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 yeah. From Monday to Sunday. From Monday to Sunday. It's focused on Liberia. Talk about home affairs. Hey. In diaspora. Current affairs. Reliable information. History. Talking about culture. Politics. Education. Entertainment. Business. Sports. Advertisement. Articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jack.
And I am Anthony Sied, and a pleasant welcome to Tough Talking Thursday, where we talk on the issues concerning our dear country, Liberia, in a very serious and tough way. Today, we are focusing on covering issues, 3 of them, by the way. We want to look at responses to U.S. sanctions by Liberian officials who have been designated by the U.S. government. Also, we will be looking at Liberia votes with America against a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. Wow, we will talk about that. Also, we will be looking at Liberia places ban on the exportation of unprocessed rubber from Liberia. These are the 3 covering issues that we will be looking at today here on Talking Thursday here at Focus on Liberia. Again, we are ready to look into this issue in a very serious way. Seated and ready to participate in the discussion is Mr. Ahmed K. Salif. He is Focused on Liberia Governance Advisor. He joins us from the beautiful state of Minnesota, where I live as well. It's good to have you, Ahmed. How you doing? How's family?
I'm just doing wonderful. Thank you for asking, Anthony. Let's do it. It's always a pleasure to be here.
All right. Thomas B. Kana is also here. He's a panelist here at Tough Talking Thursday. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Anthony. It's great to be back here again today.
Dr. Dool is also a panelist here at Tough Talking Thursday. It's good to have you.
Thank you, and happy to be here with all of you.
And our public policy analyst is also here. Carl, it's good to have you. How you doing? How's Atlanta? Is the sun shining still in our place?
It's much warmer than Minnesota. It's always my pleasure to be here.
That's not too
That's what I would tell you.
That shouldn't be too difficult.
And that's why I'm still here.
You live in Minnesota. I think you were born here, so you know what you're talking about.
Born and raised and educated, everything right there. But yeah.
Thank you.
The grass is greener south of the Mason-Dixon line. Mason-Dixon line.
Mr. Caleb Gonglo is also here. Mr. Gonglo, good evening. How you doing? It's good to have you.
How you doing, gentlemen? I'm doing fine. I'm sorry I'm still getting call from one of my friends. I tell you I'm on a program, I can talk, but you see, you had to give me some information, so I just went on.
All right. Thank you for coming. It's good to have you. folks in cyberspace, the stage is set for today's edition of Top Talking Thursday. Like I said, we are focused in on covering issues. Some officials of the Liberian government, or the CDC government, have been designated by the U.S. government for several reasons, including significant corruption, the U.S. government says. And these individuals are responding to this sanction being placed on them. And that is one of the first issues on our menu today. Samuel Twe is one of those officials who spoke today. We heard from Seaman Serena Sifos, former Solicitor General of Liberia, who penned a letter to President Weah. And Jefferson Tamakoji, who is the mayor of Monrovia, also spoke a few days ago. They are talking, Abochie also spoke. All of them have denied these allegations that they were involved. They were not involved in anything that is close to corruption. They said, well, for Seaman Serena Sifos, we'll put something on the screen here that we will read. He writes, then as now, I hereby beseech your excellency to immediately commission a panel of international experts, chaired by ECOWAS and co-chaired by a Liberian, and should be drawn from the Liberian National Bar, the African Bar, the European Criminal Bar Association, the International Criminal Court, the ICC, and at least retired official from OFA and an observer from the African Union to investigate these sanctions against not just mere individuals in your government, but are officials of your government. He continues there. Samuel Twe, who spoke today, said these words, among other things: the above verdict against us and our respective families is unbelievably unjust, unfair, and a fundamental violation of our rights. As a Minister of Finance and Development Planning, I have never abused of my position through soliciting, accepting, and offering bribes to manipulate the legislative processes and public funding, including legislative reporting and mining sector activities. I have never done so, whether in dealings with the national legislature or in dealings with any other branches or institution of the government of Liberia or with private sector actors. As a minister, my job is to provide approved resources to the national legislature upon request, subject to the availability of cash. I have never influenced legislative processes, whatever that implies. All of the officials are saying these sanctions are unjust, unfair, and they are not being given due process. My first question, and I'm going to start with you, Amen. This is your area, I want to believe. What makes these sanctions unfair and unjust in the words of these officials, and what also makes these sanctions fair and just, as others want to believe that they are fair and just?
Thank you, Anthony. It's always good to be back on Tough Talking Thursday. So these sanctions are not Liberian government sanctions. These are sanctions that are meted out against individuals. The United States government believes that have done something wrong and have violated U.S. law, particularly the provisions that were cited in the Liberia case. And it's not just Liberia, so many other individuals around the world. The sanctions are meant to protect the United States government's national security interests, trade and economic and interest. These are not, again, Liberian government sanctions. I mean, there's obviously, that's an understatement, right? I say that in emphasis because of the question you've asked me: how are they unjust? How are they unfair? Now, it's not about fairness and just. If the U.S. government as a powerful country that investigates individuals around the world, and if it has evidence and it has information against this, verified and verifiable information against these individuals, it imposes these sanctions and says, so we impose visa restrictions on you. We impose all of these kinds of restrictions on you because of human rights violation, because of economic crimes that you've committed against the interest of the United States. So when I say it's not about just or unfairness, that's the context. You can say, look, listen, I believe that I have been targeted in a way that is not consistent with your law, and therefore I'm going to challenge it. As a foreign person, you can, the U.S. government, at least based on what's on the books, on paper, they operate based on the rule of law. Right, the rule of law, they give something called due process, whether it's procedurally or in a substantive way, they give you the benefits of the doubt. Again, but coming back though, the Liberian government can say we will also countermeasure. We will impose visa restrictions on your diplomats. If they're so mad and vexed about it, we'll kick your officials out of our country. We will sanction individuals, American individuals we believe have violated our laws. Government to government, diplomatically, you can engage that way. Other than that, I think people can complain. People will say this is not fair, this is unjust. I've never done this, I've never done that. But in my experience, America would not just come and issue such sanctions against individuals that it has no information about whatsoever. They must have some kind of information, some more than probable cause. They have evidence, and based on this evidence, the result is what we're seeing. And even us as Liberian citizens. Now, some of these things, you don't have the 100% privy, you're not privy to the evidence, but if somebody is a public official and you see their action, or you see their inaction, things that are inimical to the citizens and that impact the country negatively, at least, much to be desired. If you see something like that, you say, where there's smoke, there's fire. Let's look into it. So the point is, Anthony, it's the American government realm, is not Liberian government sovereign realm.
And I want you to close with this as briefly as you can. They are saying they were not giving due process. My simple question is a due process required or needed when a foreign power is trying to sanction an individual for what they believe to be significant corruption?
No. And I said no, it will raise eyebrows because, again, yours is all about due process. However, there is a prerogative of any government to determine that an individual's behavior or a foreign government's behavior is against their national strategic interests, their national security interests, is against their economic and trade interests. And therefore, under their law, they can restrict such individuals from entering the country or take actions that may not favor those individuals that they've perceived to be doing so. Because they're not U.S. citizens, they're not subject to American law in the way that you speak of due process as such. They don't have constitutional protection because they're not U.S. nationals, they're not U.S. citizens.
Thank you, Carl. Let me come to you. I carefully listened to Samuel Twe when he delivered his response today. He talked about his daughter, who has also been sanctioned, and he talked about the unfairness of that, how she would not be able to travel. You look in the Bible, I'm sorry for doing this, it said crimes are not transferable, even in law. And I don't think this child has anything to do with what the father did. Does Samuel Twe have a point here for saying that for his daughter to also be placed on this travel restriction is not fair to that child?
I mean, this is just there's two things. To answer that, of course, it's ridiculous for Samuel Twe to think that his daughter has some innate right to travel to someone else's country. She does not. Nobody has a right to travel to someone else's country. It's a privilege. That privilege has been revoked. It's been revoked because the United States government has more information about what is happening in Liberia than probably the people who are actually running the country do. The US literally controls almost everything that is happening in Liberia, has access between the United States and Israel with our telecommunications, everything that is said, everything that is done within the country. You've got an Israeli company controlling all of the telecommunications networks, really, right? So all the airwaves, you get on the cell phone in Liberia, they will know exactly what you're saying if they want to, if they care to. Wire transactions, the banking system. Do you have on Bushrod Island the MRCC, which is controlled by the U.S. military? So they can see everything that's in the sky, at sea, everything is monitored. In fact, the United States government monitors that entire portion of the world from Liberia, from Liberian soil. So if people think that they're doing things in Liberia that others cannot see, they're wrong. They're absolutely wrong. Someone had asked me one time, they said, well, how did the people know, back in 1978, 79, what Tolbert was saying? It was only supposed to in the meeting. Well, because they had surveillance. They knew exactly what. I want people to ask themselves, what is it that happens in Liberia that doesn't pass through U.S. government surveillance? The answer is absolutely nothing. Everything's monitored. It's been that way. When I served in government, I was very much aware of this. It's overt to almost. In fact, not almost, it is overt. So you've got ministers in that country using a Gmail. They're using Gmail to communicate. They pick up their cell phones. It's all Israeli telecommunication. What do they expect? And then you want to be doing all kind of funny things. Of course they know what's happening. To address this issue about our children, they have enough information to satisfy their requirements for who should have access to their country. That should scare the average Liberian person. And what we should be doing is saying, hey, can we get some of this intelligence you have on our officials? The idea that the United States government would lie on Samuel Twere and people like Jefferson Koji, why would they do that? What would they have to gain or benefit from doing that? It's absurd. Am I a fan of other countries trying to bully a small country? No, but at the same time, you put yourself in tomato cup, they will dish you out with broom straw. How are we going to be conducting ourselves like a bunch of renegade BM boys and girls and expect that other countries to respect us? They don't have to. Even if your own justice system and your own system of ethics has been broken down, it doesn't mean that others have to, buy into the impunity that you enjoy in your country.
But Carl, I know you are saying that the U.S. has been monitoring, they see everything.
They can see everything. They can see anything they want to see.
The minister is saying that this is disinformation, this is propaganda by powerful people connected to Washington, and they are doing all this to destroy the CDC because it is a powerful grassroots movement in Liberia to give an advantage to the other side. We see the opposition, right, to CDC. They have been involved in propaganda and holding them accountable in some ways. Don't you think some of these things they've said, maybe that might be not true, play into all this today for which the U.S. acting?
I'm not really understanding your question, Sony. You're saying that first of all, I think everyone that has been sanctioned is absolutely 100% guilty of everything they're being accused of. That's the first thing. And I think there's much worse things that we're not even aware of. For you to be sanctioned, it's not propaganda, and there's no reason. What interest would the U.S. have? What national interest would the U.S. have in lying on someone? What would they have to gain? The only thing they have to gain here is to prevent clandestine, terrible characters from entering their country. They have a right to do that. But they have nothing to gain by making stuff up on the likes of Jefferson Koji and Samuel Twere. Why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense. So let them be realistic. You've seen me on this show many times talking about countries interfering in Liberia. I don't think this is an interference in Liberia. I think it's the United States trying to prevent really awful transnational criminals from entering their country, and also from having their relatives bring their their transgressions and their ill-gotten wealth into their country. They have every right to do that. Liberia should start thinking along those lines and start to protect us as well.
Calabo, the finance minister and the government of Liberia made it clear that they are providing free tuition.
In the street.
There's fire in my neighborhood. Let me look at it.
Yeah, someone should mute themselves if you know the noise is coming from.
I don't know what that is. What's going on?
Yeah, it's coming.
You're not able to mute people, so Sony?
Yeah, it's coming from Dr. Luz. And the point I'm making here is because I was listening to the minister. He lives in Liberia. He works for the Liberian government. He's being paid by Liberian government. He's a Liberian, and it came across to me as he's crying that his child will not have access to America to live there, right? And they are providing free tuition in Liberia. They are paying wife fees in Liberia. The last time President we spoke, he was even talking about paying graduation fee for students in Liberia, right? So I think Liberia will be a good place for the child to live. We got G.W. Gibson there, right? He boasted about the child, winning a competition, right? So my question here is, Calabo, does the minister have a point here or not? Because I don't think he has a point.
Well, Dennis, sorry, I'm calling you Dennis. And Sonny, yeah. I don't agree with that section about somebody crying for coming to the U.S., particularly you are an official of a government, of a sovereign nation. I don't agree with that. And I think if the minister did that, then that would be disappointing in my view. I think you should be proud to live in Liberia. You should be proud the fact that you have a country that you try to develop. And as a sovereign country, as an official government, stick to that. I think you should defend the integrity of the country as opposed to maybe crying for the unfairness of how the sanction appears to you. I must say something which I agree with, and that's why I want to actually pivot my comment to as opposed to her crying for his daughter. We can talk about the unfairness of the process itself, but the sanction itself is not meant to be fair. This is part of the many tools the U.S. Foreign or State Department uses to subdue country into submitting to them. If you check how many officials in China and Russia that the U.S. State Department issues sanctions on them almost every 3 months or every 6 months, they put it on sanction. And once they do that, these countries are also powerful. They also take it's tit for tat. They also take similar action on State Department officials or on American citizens visiting our country. They'll find some kind of crime and arrest an American in Russia or China and put it on trial. But in Liberia, we're not able to do it. In many African countries, we're not able to do it because our government officials, our government has failed for centuries in the case of Liberia to make the country a truly sovereign nation. Okay? In the case of this sanction, I have some feeling about it. I have some motivation, and I feel a little bit sad about it, a little bit, in the sense that this sanction is not really about Liberia interest. It's about the United States interest. And that's why I don't celebrate it. Because ArcelorMittal is a global mining giant, and there is a $6 billion oil deposit in Gipa area that is totally outside of ArcelorMittal mining concession area. But I was part of that technical committee team when I worked for government for 6 years. I was there. I was the secretary to the concession committee that sits at the Ministry of Lands, Mines, and Energy. This sanction on Toy, Abochie, Nukwe, I'm not talking about Serena, Johnson, Vanessa, but the latest sanction on these three guys is about that. It's about the United States shareholder interest. Okay, not about Liberian interest. It's not about fighting corruption. Let's give it that these guys are corrupt beyond the sky, but it's not about being corrupt. Because what the impact of that? All those who are put on sanction, they got re-elected anyway, except Vani Sharma, who for other reasons didn't get the re-election he wanted. But so Liberians are going to be sitting down and say, oh, but this American sanction is becoming a laughing stock. They put people on there, they cry, oh, bring justice, but the justice can come. Then they put more people that they go living good life. Or in fact, they get re-elected when they go to election, resoundingly, So what's the impact of the U.S. sanction? Because it is about the United States interest. It's not about Liberian interest. It's not meant to promote democracy in Liberia. It's meant to protect America's economic interest. That's part of the reason. It could be other reasons in the case of PYJ, in the case of maybe Vani Sharma, or in the case of Jefferson Koji. But these three guys, from my background check, what I've done and what I read in recent time and previous experience talking to some of the folks who work with me at the time, it's all about this subway concession that ArcelorMittal is going to take over a $6 billion deposit owed in NIMA based on some frivolous agreement, some MDA that was signed, which has been revised many times. In fact, anytime the ArcelorMittal call for revision, they just bribe the legislature and get a sweet deal. It doesn't even improve. Okay, that's what it's about. Because there were two groups. Kofa, how to call him, the current guy in the House of Legislature, Funati Kofa. Yes, he and others were representing ArcelorMittal interest in the legislature or in the government, submitting that ArcelorMittal should take over the area. Abochie, Nuku and others were saying no. Look, Nuku said, I was speaker. Look at this. This is not part of the old Lanco demarcation. ArcelorMittal took over Lanco asset. This software area is completely different. It was not part of the Lanco mining or concession. It was not part of it. ArcelorMittal, these Indian guys, they don't want it because they in Africa and they are very corrupt.
Your point there when it comes to Nukwe, Chie, and Tue is that they've been sanctioned because of their involvement with the concession?
Because they were on software side, and whether software was bribing them or Arcelor is bribing other ministers too, and that's what they've been doing in Liberia. The American government knows that.
What does Koji have to do with that, sir?
If you listen to me, I was very clear. I said I was talking on three persons. I was not talking on three persons, Sharma and Koji and Serena Sifa. I was very clear on that.
Okay.
Okay. So
yeah. So go ahead.
This is for me my own interpretation of it. I think the United States government got to be either careful here, otherwise they sanction people who live in better life, getting re-elected, and the government of the day has no capacity to take any action. And at the end of the day, the sanction becomes useless. Of course,
thank you.
It's meant to achieve the objective. ArcelorMittal is now going to take over software mining concession. No negotiation. They're going to sooner or later remove people from Bapa. In fact, they are building mining camp near Bapa now. Sooner or later, they're going to, because Bapa is sitting over a big deposit of ore. ArcelorMittal is going to move them very soon. And nothing is going to happen. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. I'm listening to this. This is like Klebo, you talking like Mr. Twe. You repeating his words. You repeating exactly what he said. I mean, no, listen to me. I didn't interrupt you. Please, don't listen. Don't interrupt me. I'm talking. I'm speaking.
You can say what
I'm speaking.
No,
I'm speaking. I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
I know you all.
I'm speaking. I'm speaking. I'm speaking. I'm speaking. I'm speaking. I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
One at a time, please.
Anthony, take control of your show now.
I'm speaking.
Joe, please. Go ahead, Dr. Joe.
Yeah, let him, because everything you said is exactly what Tua said today. That the sanctions were based on this one issue between two companies, two American companies fighting in Liberia. Why would the U.S. sanction Liberian functionaries about that? These are two American companies. Method Steel has a lot of investment in the U.S. They got 3 of 7 facilities. They got like thousands of workers in this country. They produce steel mills in this country. They're not a British or something company. They work here. They have almost 20,000 people in this country. So how the U.S. government will pick side against one company for one American company to another one and then sanction Liberian functionaries? Come on, you guys. We're not sleeping. We're not stupid. We've seen the government. We know what's been going on. You got Koji, you got McGill, you got Tue, you got Che, and we all know how they live. It's not a secret. People don't do, I mean, you can put your hand on my face, but you can't hide the sun, my man. I'm not talking to you anymore. I'm talking about the whole thing, this concept that, oh yeah, they're sanctioning us because we were between two American companies. Two American companies fighting in Liberia. What do you have to do with it? They got lawyers who make more money than you make in 10,000 years. They know how to deal with issues. There are two American companies, big ones. They have money, billions of dollars. They can buy everything in Liberia. They don't go to you. They don't go sanction you petty ministers or you speaker or you protect because of what? That, you know, you ask a question about the children. I'm going to that. I've been listening for 1 hour. Listen. About the kids issue. The sanction are put on the kids because when you have if Samuel brought his family here with his 6 children, he's using money, stolen money. The U.S. suspect has stolen money that is supporting them. When that money is taken away from him, as it's going to be taken away by the law, how are those children going to live? Are they going to go into the foster system? Are we going to say, okay, these are American children, I'm going to lead up with you? And the U.S. system, you know, they have a good system for that. They know how to put it into a system, and you get lost. Or he takes his children with him to Liberia and say, okay, we can support you in the U.S. because I cannot use credit cards, I cannot use banking system, I cannot support you. We have to go home. When you become an adult, you have your American passport, you can come back. But not until you can prove that you can support yourself in the U.S. It's part of the sanction. As somebody just said, it's not fair. That's what it's supposed to be. It's like an accident. So you have an accident, your day is ruined. It's nobody's fault. Somebody did something stupid. The American government would go what? Go look for Koji, somebody mayor in Monrovia, or go look for Mr. Samuel Tue, Minister of Finance of Liberia, and then put them on sanctions because they have to have sanctions on a sanctions day. These sanctions been ready for a long time. They didn't publish them because they didn't want to interfere with the electoral system. And Samuel Tue knows this. He's been fighting it. He knows. Exactly. You can call him. He knows. These sanctions been ready since April, May. But they said they will not release them because they didn't want to interfere with the electoral process.
Exactly so.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that'll do. I know.
But then I'm going to make a quick comment. And I think if we're going to have this show based on respect for each panelist's view, I think we should state our disagreement without necessarily describing that individual in the way Dr. Du did. And I will be very clear and categorical on this. I don't submit my opinion easily, whether it's in a closed-door meeting or it's in public. And I can say this on record. Based on my communion, I've never watched even Samuel Tue. He's not even my friend on Facebook. If he's even on Facebook, he's never been my friend on Facebook. I've never even heard whether Samuel Tue have even spoken. Even the sanction, as I speak to you, I've never read anything about the sanction. In fact, the person who told me about sanction was my brother, Councillor Gonglo. And today somebody just called me just before the show and said, Councillor Gonglo spoke, and I said, oh, I'm going to go on the show. Let me go listen to him. Maybe I will pick up some ideas, right? And he was basically thanking the United States government. He didn't say anything more than that. So I didn't even pick up anything that I could argue. But I argued on this because prior to the sanction, I'm from Nimba, and we've been in different arguments on Solway and Aslo Mita. This is something I know. And I know the guys who in government who have been supporting Mita and Solway. I'm aware of these things because these are things we argue every day.
I think you made your point.
And for Nimba issue. But for Dr. Du to say, I sound like Samuel Tue at this, that's the meaning. I never let Samuel Tue.
You sound
like Adam Johnson.
Yeah, but Clevo, I'm sorry if you did. I'm sorry if you offended, but that's your argument are exactly the one that Samuel Tue made.
Why you listen to this guy? I never read anything.
Yeah, but I listened to him. I listened to Chewa Gongo.
Dr. Do, he is saying he suspect that part of the reason, or one of the reasons this action may have come on these individuals could be with their involvement with the concession in that area. That's what he said. And
yes, that's what I'm saying. And coincidentally, and that's what Tue said. And coincidentally, Tue said the same thing.
And you
that's
can
all I said. That's all I said.
You could say you could register your disagreement.
Yeah, but no. I mean, it's simple.
Let us leave it. Let me progress. Let me
the argument that two American companies or American government. Look, it depends on who are the officials in the State Department. This is political. The State Department is a political organization, okay? It depends on who said there. And they always say the State Department don't just come to government from Harvard as a student. They come from different corporations. They represent, if some of them work for different corporations with different shareholder interests. So they don't have sharing all the same companies.
Let me just be clear. The U.S. government does not sanction people because of corporate interests. That doesn't even make any sense. What they're going to do is withhold funding. They have so many other means of soft power to push their agenda. Sanctions are not meant to push their agenda. They're punitive. Exactly what they said they're sanctioning them for is exactly why they're sanctioning them. They know that they have been involved in exactly what they accuse them of. It is not made up. It is not propaganda. Don't buy into these conspiracy theories.
These are political sanctions. These are political sanctions. Why if individuals representing a corporate interest who feel that maybe a particular government is not going their way, lobbyists with powerful individuals in Washington.
They would have possibly done this before elections, and Sony. This is after post-election. These were already on the way out. The whole conspiracy theory doesn't even make sense because they have so many other ways to influence and push their agenda. This is just such an outrageous claim. It's not even necessary. They could just call somebody in the back and say, hey, we're funding this, we're doing this, we're going to withdraw this if you guys don't do this. Why would they go through sanctioning people and their children? Come on. Let's be rational sometimes,
Thank you.
It's not even logical. Sorry, Thomas.
It can't even be about corruption too. One can argue because
Mr. Gonglo, we have to give Thomas
Thomas Fowler has not been sanctioned. One can go on naming very corrupt people in the legislature. One can argue that. There are too many corrupt people in the government.
It's the specific, egregious, and the level of the acts and the involvement. It's the level of their acts.
Maybe the difference is the magnitude.
The magnitude, how egregious the crimes are, and they listed them. They're talking about human rights abuses in some cases. I mean, this has nothing to do with Assalam at all.
Mr. Gonglo, I think you said you have agreed with Ahmed that this can be fair. So it can be fair, isn't it? So I get your point, but Thomas has to come
here. No,
here.
it's a foreign policy too. It's not about fairness.
Why do you want to undermine the sanctions?
Well, let come to Thomas here.
Because
Thomas,
Thomas, how you doing, Baba?
I'm okay. I think for me, I want to look at this from the perspective of Liberians, whether it is fair or unfair. I mean, like we've all said, this is a foreign policy tool that is used by another country, and they are saying that you have done things that are going to affect their foreign policy interests, their trade interests, and all of that. But how are Liberians reacting to this? And I think the message that is going to send is that when you are out there serving the public, you need to be very careful. Because even if, let's say it is for ArcelorMittal, if you ask the average Liberian whether Samuel Tuah is corrupt, what are they going to say? He has been involved with all of these different financial issues, and people generally believe he's corrupt. So this is why he has to come out to be able to fight and link it to something else to say that this is the reason why I was sanctioned. And if we go through the individual sanction of some of these people that have been sanctioned, like the issue of Jefferson Koji, they highlighted the issue of human rights violation, the beating of students. I think it was related to the issue of Marty Colley, who was beaten on the day of his graduation from the University of Liberia, and he fled that country, has not gone back. The issue of Bill Tuawe at the port, there was this issue between him and the port manager in Buchanan. That was all out in the press, that the money that I think the very metal steel was paying, they were asking the port manager in Buchanan to divert it to their individual accounts. The LACC had an issue on Bill Tuawe. So I don't think for us to say it is unfair, we have to define from what angle. Because if you look at what these people have been doing in their individual capacity, you can be able to identify some of the issues that are related to corruption or human rights violations. So on the issue of whether they will be able to get through this and to have their fair day in court, this is why the Liberian government needs to pick this up and let them go through a judicial process, because many of the laws that they have violated, the U.S. is sanctioning them for it, but they are violation of our existing laws. If you are corrupt, we have laws against corruption. If you violate human rights, we have laws against human rights violations. So for me, I think it's for the Liberian government to be able to go through the prosecution of the cases, like Serena Ceasefire has called for it. And I think the responses to these sanctions is people that have careers are the ones that are heavily hit. Serena Ceasefire takes it very seriously because he understands that his career is on the line. Samuel Tuah takes it very seriously because when he leaves the Ministry of Finance, he cannot go into the international financial system. He can't go to the World Bank, the IMF, the African Development Bank. He can't go anywhere.
Exactly so.
So he's not only crying for his daughter, who happens to have been born in America, but he's crying for his own career. Serena Ceasefire is in the same case. Jefferson Koji really doesn't have time. He's between Cinco and Broad Street. The only thing he does is to work with these young people. So he really is not really feeling the impact, but those people who have careers are really feeling the pinch of it. Councillor Sharma, when he was sanctioned, his law firm was one of the biggest law firms in Liberia. When he was sanctioned, people who worked there left, and that law firm is breaking down gradually. So I think like Serena is Councillor Ceasefire is calling. If they didn't get the current president to be able to take these cases through court, they should really appeal to the incoming government to be able to take them through the judicial process. If they are going to clear their names, if there is no evidence, the court will be able to say that. But to me, to just come and have a press conference and you have a bunch of young people clapping for you, and you say the people are lying on you, it really doesn't call it.
Thank you. And that brings us to what can be done by the Liberian government. As you are aware, the U.S. government, through the Sachet Affairs at the embassy there in Liberia, is calling on the incoming administration to prosecute the individuals who have been sanctioned. But before we can get to the new administration, we have a government right now. Serena Ceasefire is calling on the president, hey, set up a committee. Let us be given due process. Whatever will be the outcome, whether or not each of these individuals will be guilty, will America base further decision on that to say, okay, their investigation proves that this person did it and the other person did not do it, so we will maintain the sanction or remove the sanction. What can they do, Mr. Saleh? That's my question. What can they do locally as a government? Because these are
what Serena Cephas is calling for, Thomas, I understand your point. He's taking it seriously. Of course, he should. What he's calling for is not a Liberian judicial process. What he's calling for is ridiculous. He's saying ECOWAS, yes, okay, the president should panel, right? Establish a panel. That's a Liberian process. But then they should have ECOWAS members on the panel from ECOWAS, a retired president from OFAC, from the Treasury Department, essentially a U.S. government retired individual who has knowledge of these issues. All these international folks, this is not Liberian jurisdiction question. So if you broaden it that way, then you don't know what you're talking about, essentially. But if he's saying, look, these are allegations under Liberian law, and these sanctions have impugned my reputation. I am innocent. I didn't do such as a Liberian citizen. You know, they're making allegations that I have violated the Liberian law, and so they should go through Liberian jurisprudence. He's not asking for that. He's asking for a political process that should involve international people, international bodies, individuals from international bodies. That doesn't cut it, because a foreign policy tool by a foreign government that has been implemented to protect that foreign government's interests, those matters can be handled differently. That is not the kind of way that you go about. So what would they do? What would that committee's outcome, let's say the investigative process, that there's a report or something to find that Serena Cephas is innocent? They recommend to the U.S. government to lift the sanction. Is that how it works? It does not work that way. Mr. Cephas should subject himself. No, I mean, well, yeah, I understand what you're saying, Thomas, but what I read, even what Anthony just put on the screen for us, that Serena is proposing, the letter he wrote to President Weah, that letter to me is way beyond bound. The what he's calling for. If he's saying, look, I subject myself to Liberian law to investigate me. If you find evidence, prosecute me. Let me fit. He's not asking for that. Why is he not asking for that? He is the most recent Solicitor General, the former chief prosecutor of the country. He knows the law. He knows Liberian law. Why is he not asking for a pure Liberian process to exonerate himself, to clear his name, at least in the country?
Exactly.
He's not doing that. And there's a reason why he's not doing that. He's trying to politicize and make a diplomatic crisis of sort for Liberia.
Deflection.
Yeah, for Liberia to say, oh, listen, America, you're just battering our people. You're disgracing our people. And so this is a diplomatic crisis. Let's resolve it diplomatically. That's kind of what I hear him call for. So that letter will go nowhere. What can they do, Anthony, is a responsible Liberian government should say, oh, this is concerning to us. Because what you're saying, you are alleging that these individuals, these citizens of our country, have violated our law, that they're corrupt. They violated our procurement law. They violated, human rights laws in the country. They violated all kinds of laws under Liberian jurisdiction. And that should call the attention of the Liberian government. They should then investigate. They diplomatically can go to the U.S. government and say, look, if you have hard evidence, as we're building our evidence, investigating, please share with us. Okay, you can do that and go through the judicial process. That's one way to do. If you want to look at it from the policy, political side of things, you can say, look, I want to set up some kind of commission of inquiry of some sort, or some asset recovery process where these individuals who have been accused and sanctioned by a foreign government can be subjected to and be investigated. If they're exonerated through that process, these individuals then will be free under Liberian law. They have to find other ways to remove themselves, and some of them, by the way, according to the charge, They are banned. They have visa restrictions. These sanctions are permanent for life. That's what she said. Okay, so what does that mean? You can come to the US, you can say, look, I don't have to go to America, but that's not what it's about. Like Thomas said, your career is ruined. Nobody in the European system wants to do business with you. Banks in Liberia that want to do business around the world don't want to do business with you, because if you save your money in a Liberian bank at US dollars, you move it from account to account between banks, it goes through the Federal Reserve System. It's a wire system. It goes through, it's the SWIFT system. It goes through the Federal Reserve System. So they see it, and then you fall into enforcement violation, enforcement action. Then you are part of, basically you get, as a U.S. citizen or U.S. institution, there are other implications for that. The European system is interlinked, interconnect with the U.S. system. They're not going to do that. So banks will run away from these individuals. Nobody will hire them. No one wants to do business with them. Not only that, they can travel to the U.S. and countries that are allied to the Americans. So it's not about somebody coming and singing for you and lifting you up in the air. That if those who understand it, like Mr. Twell understands the implications, former Solicitor General Serena Cephas understands the implications, and so they're taking it seriously. Which, if you read Twell's body language, and even worse, he spoke. This thing hit him hard.
It did.
Thank you. And Carl, the simple question is, what can the Liberian government do now, based on the call from the U.S. government, and would that be of any help to change anything for these individuals?
I don't know why we keep talking about this in circles with other topics to discuss. No, the Liberian government's responsibility here is to take this very seriously and prosecute. So prosecution has two outcomes under your laws. You can't do anything about it. The U.S. government has already said, based on what they're looking at, they don't want them there. Why should we be begging another country to allow our criminals, our potential criminals, to enter their country? They deem these people undesirable. What is Liberia's responsibility? Prosecution. Prosecution can have two outcomes: conviction or vindication. Prosecute them. Let them either be convicted under our laws or vindicated under our laws. That is the responsibility of the government. Prosecute, prosecute, prosecute. There's nothing else. I mean, we beat this sanction thing to death. Let's move on to the next topic. Honestly,
thank you.
It is what it is.
I just want you to be brief, and then we'll move to the next topic. Mr. Gongo, the U.S. is calling for prosecution, right? Can the Bwaka's government be counted on, the incoming government, to prosecute these individuals? Remember, Prince Johnson heavily supported Joseph Bwaka. He is one of the individuals on this sanction list. Should we expect the incoming government to obey the Almighty America and prosecute these individuals? Should we expect something that would happen?
Well, I think the government of the Unity Party should act on what they believe it is in the best interest of their government. If they believe prosecuting based on the U.S. sanction is in the best interest of the Unity Party government, they should do so. Because I don't think sanction individual, one of the things Unity Party spoke about during the elections, that if you get us elected, we're going to prosecute those on sanction, because there were people on sanction already as we went into the elections. Prince Johnson, Vanny Sherman, who else was another person? They were on sanction. Bill Twawa, Magay. As we went into the elections, we didn't see, besides Councillor Gonglo, who spoke on these, we didn't see the other candidate to speak on what they would do if they have power on these sanctioned people, right? So I don't know whether they had any calculation, whether it was in our interest. So I think it's up to them to determine what is in the best interest of the government to succeed to do it. So, for example, I will tell you this: during the election, I just forgetting the woman. I think I don't know Vicky, but she said here the State Department ambassador at large. She's a senior official of the State Department. She visited the Liberian. She visited Monrovia. She didn't meet with President Weir, but she met with the Minister of Justice. She met with civil society organizations. and she held interview at OKFN. I listened to her. She was very clear that these violations under the sanctions were, some of them were violations, or all of them were violations under the laws of Liberia, that the Liberian government should prosecute those people. She was very clear on it. In fact, on the TRC, they asked her a question on the TRC, because she's ambassador at large for either war, human rights, war crime, or whatever, And she said, there are, for example, people committed murder in the TRC, and murder is a crime in Liberia. They don't have to wait for a tribunal. The government of Liberia can actually, issue an indictment, arrest warrant, because their victims, victims' families are living, and they can provide testimony and provide witnesses for government to convict people who killed these. Take for example, Samodo family. They can testify, or the video evidence can also convict people who killed Samodo, okay? And Johnny Na family, and you can go on naming all the family who can also testify, okay? So she was very clear in that interview. So for me, it's left with the incoming government to decide what's in their interest, because that was not one of the issues to put before the voter. If the chemistry and the politics is changing, they may change also equally, but it's up to them. I can.
Thank you, Dr. Du.
Yes, sir.
The call by the U.S. to prosecute.
Well,
will it be done? Should it be done?
Yeah, it should be done. I think just for the people who say they've been unjustly accused to be able to clear their names. I think, as you was, people say, you want justice, you go to court, you clear your name, you become innocent. Either the U.S., come back and reverse its position on that, then at least in the eyes of Liberians, you have been, you've been clear. And I think that, for Liberians, and that's what should matter really, that, you can clear your name, facing Liberians and say, no, I did not do this, I do not do that. Or, say, okay, I can explain how I have $5 million in the bank in America when I'm making $5,000 a month. So this is so simple. I think the Boakai government has to do it. It's a test to his, willingness to fight corruption. That's what he said he will do. So he has to come up and say, okay, you do this, we're going to find the files. You get a file from the U.S. Embassy, and then you put them on the table and you call everybody, set up a special court, or give more power to LSCC to prosecute, to do research and then prosecute, and then you move forward. Whoever is found guilty, pay the fines. If you're not guilty, you say, okay, and then you can write to the U.S. government and say, we went through the system, and then we think that, this person was wrongly accused for, da, 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 da. But I think the government will have to do it. And I think the way they did it, this is a poison gift, He's coming to go into his government, and the U.S. put it on his lap. You go and these guys are just getting out of the government. And it's a big challenge for him to do. But he will have to do it, because then if the U.S. doesn't respect you as a Liberian government, nobody else respects you. That's the problem. We are still a colony. Sorry to say it.
Thank you. Thomas?
Well, I may clarify, but I just wanted to restate that when I spoke about Councillor Cephas, I wasn't saying that what he's proposing should be followed, because everyone he named are mostly institutions that he have worked with. The European Bar, ECOWAS. I would think that he got friends there, and he just want this committee to be put in place so that he can come and release him. So that wasn't what I was talking about.
But he worked for the Liberian government too.
No, he worked for the Liberian government, but he's part of the European Bar. He's member of many bars around the region. So these are the bars he was talking. So I wasn't saying that the government of Liberia should actually implement what he's calling for. What I'm saying is that he's calling for an investigation. The Liberian government should say to him, we are going to investigate, but we are not going to follow your recommendation, because we are a country of laws and we have our existing laws. We will prosecute using the existing laws that we have. On the question of whether the new government should prosecute, and I don't want to agree to the point that because they did not specifically say that they were going to prosecute sanction officials and therefore they should not do it. If you look at the United Party platform, there's an entire section on fighting corruption. And they are sanctioning these people for corruption. So are you then going to say, okay, I did not specifically mention in my platform that I was going to prosecute corrupt officials and therefore I'm not going to do it? They've also been talking a lot about audit, that we are going to audit the outgoing government. Why do you want to audit them? Because you believe that they are corrupt. So if you believe that they are corrupt and there's somebody already saying to you that have evidence to prove that they are corrupt, doesn't that even help your audit process? That these can be evidence that you can start with. The other thing is that I think there's a little bit of a change. Now the finance minister who presided over the entire financial system of your country, the US is saying that he's corrupt. Are you not going to do anything about it? You are just going to appoint a new finance minister to go to the Ministry of Finance and sit there and you move on? What message will you be sending to all of your partners as well as Liberians who believe that this government has been corrupt for the past 6 years? So I don't think the incoming government has a lot of choice around this. They will definitely have to take action on this issue. If they don't do it, that will be the beginning of the lack of confidence in the Joe Biden administration going forward.
Thank you, Thomas. And something where when the MCC scorecard was released, and even in his statement, he talked about how Liberia scored the highest ever under the administration, and that about $500 million will be coming Liberia's way. He was commending the U.S. government, but at the same time, he was telling the U.S. government, you people are treating me unfairly. How could we have passed this test, bringing $500 million, reduce inflation from 37% to I think about 7%, the greatest drop ever. And you tell us, in fact, our president has considered graciously, our democratic credentials have improved significantly. And all you're doing now is just trying to be unfair to us. And the other part I enjoyed was that you have the young people behind him saying he's the best finance minister, but the best finance minister is crying that his daughter will not go to America, and you are there dancing and you will stay in Liberia. Interesting part. To another issue here on our menu, Liberia votes with America against ceasefire in Gaza. We will get to that topic after this very brief break. Stay tuned.
Our country, sweet Mandela, our country, that God gave us this country. Fellow Liberian, that God gave us this country. We are calling on everyone here to come and pray for this country, Liberia. Liberian, God gave us this country.
Indeed, Liberians, God gave us this country. Liberia on Wednesday, December 13, voted against a humanitarian ceasefire in war-torn Gaza, Liberia being the only African nation to do so. Dr. Doe, I have a question for you. How logical is Liberia's vote against the humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza? Has Liberia not experienced war enough to know what a humanitarian ceasefire is? My second question is what is Liberia's goal in voting with America against the humanitarian ceasefire? You've been in this diplomatic area. Talk to me.
It's something that I thought about, and I'd say, okay, countries have the national interest. Israel will always vote with the U.S., right?
Mm-hmm.
Liberia will always vote for the U.S., but except that Israel gets $3 billion a year, no question asked. Liberia get what? And then Liberia goes to the UN to vote. Is this political naivete Like you don't have a sense of what you're doing. You don't have any political agenda of your own. Because the U.S. government sanctioned two of the highest government officials in this week. As a retaliation, you will say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to vote against the U.S., but I abstain to show that I'm not pleased with sanctioning my government officials. That's what you do as a government. You know, 1992, we faced a similar situation with the U.S. And it was against about Israel. The UN was going to vote on the Zionism as racist ideology and something like that. The US needed somebody's support. They went to Liberia. They went to Dr. Sawyer as president of the interim government. And what he said, he told the ambassador, okay, let me call my people. I'll talk to you. Let's talk about it in the morning. It's called Ambassador Bruya, Bagos Matthew, myself, Lamine Warite, and Philip Banks, and Ambassador Peter Johnson. We sat and talked about it. And at the time, the US was not recognizing the Liberian government, the interim government. Every time the maritime money came, Banks, as the Minister of Justice, had to come to Washington, D.C., go to court, file papers, and get the money. So one of the old ambassadors, Peter Johnson was the ambassador, Ambassador Brewer was there. And he said, they came up with this. They said, what? You can put an end to this thing. We can get something from the US. They must say what? They say, well, we can get them to recognize us without spending a dime, and then we get our money free, and we can get our diplomatic status in the US resolved and all of that. And Brewer said, let's just ask the ambassador, this is not a personal thing. I can do it as a favor to you, but it has to be government to government. Can you send me a letter? Even from you or the State Department, whatever it is, send me a letter, and then we'll go ahead and call the ambassador in New York to do it. The ambassador came in the morning with a letter, Your Excellency, President Emil Sawyer, President of the Republic of Liberia. And we had a thing. And that was how the US government recognized Liberia. We got something out of it. But we voted with the US. But we got the recognition, we got our money back, and we got a diplomatic status in the US through that simple letter. But it took 5 hours of discussion with real ambassadors. You're talking about Peter Johnson, you're talking about Ambassador Brewer, you're talking about Lamine Warite, Baron Tab. 5 hours of discussion to come and say, let's get them to send us a letter. We get something, and then we vote. We don't care, because America will get its way anyway at the UN. So what did Liberia get out of this? I don't know. Maybe we got something out of it. But you don't just give up your votes at the UN. That's your bargaining power, especially when you are 1 out of 10 to side with the US. You say, you know what? These sanctions are hurting us.
I don't agree with you that.
And that will do. I mean, you are suggesting that Liberia just voted without using that as an opportunity to maybe negotiate for something that would allow me to learn to negotiate for something that would benefit us as a country, because this is a diplomatic arena, right? Because you mentioned Israel is getting $3.8 billion a year. So Israel has more than reason to vote with America, because of the money it's getting, right? But for Liberia, don't you think Liberia is doing this for a reason? They have their ambassador. They have USAID that's giving something. Maybe Liberia is doing that to get the support it continues to get, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's like, you live on peanuts, you die with hunger. You don't, as a nation, you don't go, oh yeah, the embassies. No, that's not it. You are at the UN. You say, yes, what do we get in exchange? Yeah, Ambassador Linda Green, she knows every Liberian, she knows everybody at the embassy. If you come to you, okay, the vote is coming, are you going to vote for us? I say, madam, can we talk about it? By the time you say, can we talk about it? She say, okay, what do they want? That's how you do it. That's what diplomacy is. You don't have a boss in New York. Liberia is as important as anybody else. But if you diplomats are like, oh yeah, madam, yeah, what can we do? Yeah, what do we make to sit down? Yeah, Mr. And the way I said, Lincoln, that Anthony Blinken last week whispered to him, oh yeah, our government is going to do business with you under your administration. I said, why didn't he say loudly? Why he had to whisper to you? So that kind of stuff. And then he said, we dismissed Mr. What is his name? The ambassador who was dismissed by him.
George Pardon.
No, pardon. In Washington, in New York, the UN ambassador Brown.
Oh yeah, Louis Brown.
Yeah, he said we have fired Louis Brown because he voted against the U.S.
Yeah, he said that.
Because we had that stupidity. We say, we go to the U.S., we got to do everything the U.S. want, but U.S. doesn't give you a damn thing about it. He doesn't. It's
stupid. As someone who saw the war in Liberia, I have knowledge of what a humanitarian a ceasefire is all about. And when you see the images, you're like, no, Liberia that experienced war will not vote against a humanitarian ceasefire to allow access, for individuals who are providing aid to get to the suffering people. But Liberia going to vote. How does it make Liberia to look if you look at it from that humanitarian standpoint?
I mean, yeah, of course, a humanitarian standpoint, but I think we have to look at the historical context of our relationship with Israel.
Okay.
Right? When Israel was established, our great intellectuals like Edward Wilmot Blyden saw a parallel between Liberia and the Back to Africa movement and Zionism, I should say. Right? So Liberia precedes Israel in being an asylum for oppressed people. And Blyden didn't see these people going to the Middle East from Europe mostly as the biblical Israelites, as a lot of people confuse them with today. He understood that it was a state, a place they were going as an asylum from persecution. And Edward Wilmot Blyden, being a West Indian who went to Africa, similarly, Liberia is older than Israel, than the state, welcomed it. So Liberia was one of the first countries to recognize Israel. The Tubman administration basically supported Israel all along. It wasn't until the Talbert administration, after 1971, that you see Liberia asserting its independence of thought and also looking at things from a perspective of human rights abuses. When they saw some of the atrocities that were being committed in the name of Zionism, Talbert deviated from America and even condemned the Western world for supporting what was going on in Israel. Talbert was murdered. We then had a military junta that took over. And the Doe administration parroted every single thing the Americans did. And the Americans happily recognized and financially supported the Doe administration for their blind loyalty and support. So since 1980 coup, Liberia has not asserted itself really independently. I'm not, doubting what Dr. Duke said. He was a firsthand witness to that. But really, on a grand scale, Liberia has been a friend to Israel. The more sickening part about this is that I don't even think that this was even just about cookie cutter or rubber stamping America. The president of the Republic of Liberia took a pilgrimage, almost a religious journey to Israel with some of his government officials, where they bathed in holy water and threw themselves in the tomb of Christ, which, all these kinds of things, because it's not like Liberia doesn't have a relationship with Israel that they're only mocking or mimicking America's relationship. You also have a president who thinks that, when he supports Israel, he's supporting Jesus himself. This is his mindset. They've turned this into some kind of religious, holy interaction, and that they support. I believe the we administration supports Israel in its violent suppression of Palestinians. They will not condemn it. They don't see anything wrong with it. So to sit here and say that they don't know what they're doing, I don't necessarily agree with Dr. Duke on that. I think they really believe in their anti-African minds. Even though they're Africans, you could be an anti-African and be an African. You know, you could be anti-human rights and be an African. You can identify with oppressors and be an African. You don't have to always be, you know, righteous humanitarian just because you're African. There are many Africans who side with imperialism. George Weah and his administration are those kinds of Africans. They know what they're doing. They didn't go to Israel blindly. They believe in that stuff. They think that Israelis are correct in what they're doing, and they receive resources from Israel, the Weah administration, logistical support. When the June 7th protests happened, who came to the rescue? It was the Israeli militia to make sure that if anybody went astray, that they would put them down. So the Weah administration has lots of support from Israel. It's not just about America. They have a direct relationship with these Zionists, you know. So it is what it is.
Can I add something to that? I mean, before you just 10 seconds. You know that issue about Israel and Liberia in 1985 when the coup happened. It was the Israel
1980,
coup.
sir.
85, yeah, when the coup happened, coup.
Oh, the coup attempt. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, it was the Israeli who put dough on TV. When Kuroka was still in the yard of the, you know, of ALTV.
Exactly.
The Israeli put dough on TV, blacked all the communication system, and everybody panicked. That dough had magic, but that was the simple, you know, case of it. That's what happened in 1985. It was the Israeli who that put dough back in power. Sorry, I had to.
No, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. So this whole thing about us just rubber stamping America, we've got some real deep and ugly, unpatriotic relationships with Israel. And as I said, Africans are sometimes siding against the best interest of humanity and siding with imperialists, either because of cowardice, ignorance, or a combination of both.
I mean, Cole listed the historical ties there. But my question is, okay, we do have the same ties with the US as well as Israel. Israel, on the other hand, has the same ties with us in America. But if you look at Israel, it's benefiting $3.8 billion a year. What are the Israelis doing? What do they have that we don't have? And say that we are not leveraging the relationship to our benefit, and Israel is doing that, for which we getting peanuts in that to those wars, and we getting absolutely nothing. But like, want to blindly supporting these people?
Anthony, that's totally a different conversation. Israel is like America's, you know, outpost in a way. It's just like a cabin. I mean, you listen to Israelis speaking English. Half of them were educated and born in New York, in America. Or when this war started, young people who are dual Israelis, U.S. citizens, they're both members of the IDF and U.S. military. So. So we don't have that kind of relationship. That I'm just to establish that these are Americans who are Israelis essentially. Some of them were born in Israel, and I recognize that, who never lived in the United States or attended school here. But by and large, look, Israel would never admit, for example, that they had nuclear weapons, which they do, because the U.S. keeps nukes there as well. For example, it's a big sort of open foreign policy secret that everybody knows. There are things that privilege Israel, that are not, we're Black African people who don't produce anything for ourselves, don't grow anything for ourselves. Anything significant that's been built in Liberia was built by the U.S. government in some way. Our airport, our first major road in the interior, our port, all of them go back. The university has American connection. Go back and look at the history. That's how it's been. I'm not a historian, but I do read history. So just taking it on that, from that sort of perspective, right? Coming to what Cole was saying, though, except that we have the evidence that President Weah himself in his church, he blasted Louis Brown. How dare you vote against the United States? We vote for America. They are primary, wherever they go, that's where we go. That's what President said. It ain't, put this religious thing up there. Of course, the Liberians have this sentiment. Liberian Christians have this sort of religious sentiment towards Israel. There's the Holy Land. But
yeah,
Israel,
but that reference to Louis Brown had nothing to do with Israel. Just to clarify, the Louis Brown issue had nothing to do with Israel. It had to do with a different policy issue. I just want to clarify that.
No, it was Israel.
It was.
What specific vote about Israel? Because my understanding
there was a vote at the United Nations, which Louis Brown did not vote with the United States. It was against.
I think it was moving the capital.
Yes, it was when they're moving the embassy to Tel Aviv. They're moving the capital, something like that. There was a vote at the United Nations.
Okay, I thought it was something else.
And President Weah actually did go and look for the tape, go and look for it.
No, I know he said it, but I was under the impression I was told it was something else. Thanks for the clarification.
It was about Israel. He said it. He said, how dare you are ambassador over there. That America is our partner, our number one partner. You don't even understand. You vote against them, so we record you, right? Additionally, when Finance Minister Tua made his press statement, in the credentials that he named, right, he included that, like, we just voted with the United States, something to that effect. The President Weah considered the election the most democratic thing any African government has done in recent time in a region where there's coup everywhere. He didn't mention the coup, but sort of he mentioned that President Weah is considering the election and sort of the peaceful nature of it, maintaining democracy, and all these good things that we have done for you in America, as I said, where it's, see what you gave us. You sanction the highest, some of the high officials of government and things like that. So my point I'm making is, I think they're reading it with, there are other things more than just the religious component and that historical piece that I think coincided. That is all true, but the way we see America, we just, at least our government, they just go with what the U.S. said. They're not making any demand diplomatically or even politically, because they could have made demands. They could have made. No other African countries voted on this particular resolution with the U.S. government. Look at the countries that voted with the U.S. government. And historically, too, at the United Nations, America had coerced smaller countries, threatening them with withdrawing aid and things like that, and offering aid, additional aid, those who vote with them, those who agree not to vote against their interest. Not saying that's what happened in this case. We haven't read, I haven't read that particular one yet, but historically, there are maneuverings that happen at the United Nations. My reading is this particular vote, it was just a vote because it was the U.S. It was nothing else. It was because the U.S. is voting with Israel. We cannot vote against them. And they could have abstained. They could have made a point and made a big, fuss about it in a way that we were going to get some kind of attention. But our government didn't calculate it that way.
And I agree with you that because this is about humanitarian ceasefire, right? So they could say, hey, this is about humanitarian ceasefire. So we're not going to vote against them because those who are vulnerable in the war zones, or they need to have access to food, water, and other essential things that they need so they can survive. But Liberia blindly went with the U.S. I don't know for what reason. Thomas.
I don't agree that it was blind. I think two things can be true. There's always multiple factors, but to say that the Liberian government and the Weah administration don't have their own relationship with Israel, that is,
I did not say I didn't say they don't have their own relationship.
I'm responding to Sony that they're just blindly voting with America. I think is too simple. I think it's more.
My interest would be why did they vote with America, or why did they even vote? Why did they even vote against this humanitarian ceasefire? What would be the logical reason for
because they believe in what Israel is doing. They honestly believe in what Israel is doing.
All right.
There's a lot of Liberians who believe in what Israel is doing. Just because you and I have a different perspective, a lot of people in that country think Israel is correct in their behavior, in their conduct. That's a fact.
And what I can wrap my head around.
So yes, while it's true, Liberia is a parrot, a mimic of American foreign policy, even when it's to our detriment. we also have a huge segment of our population that unfortunately sides with Israel in this conflict and thinks Israel is correct. We can't deny that aspect, that factor. It's the truth.
Thank you. And Thomas, my concern here is Liberia have had a unique experience when it comes to conflict. So all Liberians, especially Liberian officials who are representing us, you understand what a humanitarian ceasefire is. That is something they should tell America. No, on this one, this is for humanitarian reason. We will vote against it. We will vote for it.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I agree to that point, because even as an individual, normally I love to watch news, but if you go to some news channels, everything is about this war that is going on in Israel. You see buildings demolished down to the floor. You see hospitals overcrowded. And it will just make you to think about what we went through as a country. So I will imagine that this was a very difficult decision for Liberia, because the message you'll be sending out there is that 20 years ago, you were just in a crisis and you were calling upon the whole world to intervene. You had all of these peace talks in other people's countries, and they had to come to your aid for the civil war to end. And here you are voting against a humanitarian ceasefire. So I think it must have been a very difficult decision. But again, it comes back to these historical factors that, the previous speakers have laid out. Our relationship with the U.S., ongoing relationship with Israel. Because I think I had read previously, the recent trip that the president made to Israel wasn't just the one that he made. I think he had gone there previously, and when he went there, there was some negotiation about Israel investing in Liberia's agriculture sector and all of that. So I think it's a combination of all of these things actually interplaying. Maybe expectation about what Liberia was expected to benefit from Israel and all of that. But again, the other thing I wanted to mention is that if you are the Liberian ambassador to the UN, and you saw how Louis Brown was recalled simply because he voted against the US, I do know that when these votes take place, it's not an individual deciding because you're the ambassador. There are these diplomatic notes that come from your capital that will tell you exactly what you need to do. But if at this point in transition, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs did not give you that guidance, and you are left to decide how to vote on this issue, and you look at Louis Brown, what were you going to do as an individual? So I think it was really complex decision that they needed to make. The decision has already been made. The last time Louis Brown voted, he said he did not vote against the US, but he stood with Africa, because the entire Africa decided not to vote in a certain way. And it was a decision they decided as a region that we weren't going to vote in favor of the US this time. And then even with the way he managed to package it, it did not really cut. The president still came after him. So I think the ambassador might have thought that this is a transition. I might want to stay here beyond the new government that is coming in. I don't want to put myself into problem. But to come back to the point of the humanitarian ceasefire, I think it's really good that it would have been good for Liberia to really just vote in favor of the ceasefire, considering our past history of civil war that we went through.
Thank you. Mr. Gonglo, we voted against a humanitarian ceasefire. We were once war-torn. How does it make us look as a country?
It makes us look bad. But I would say this. I think when you reflect on the vote, one would say, you look at history. In some sense, Liberia has been like a renegade among African nations sometimes. Sometimes I should say at a critical point. Like if you reflect on the different activities that took place around the formation of the African the OAU, the Organization of African Unity. If you look at the Nkrumah group, what they were proposing, it was tournament of Liberia that actually, kind of gave Africa OAU, the type of OAU we have. It didn't allow Africa to really follow Nkrumah direction. And if we have followed Nkrumah thought, Nkrumah path, Africa would probably be different, totally different today. But Terminal of Liberia became, in my mind, in my judgment, a renegade in Africa. And actually, with the help of the CIA, watered down what was going to be a progressive organization for Africa. Then this is one moment again in African history and in the history of Liberia that our country has failed many African nations again. A post-war nation, a country that fought for the end of apartheid. How do you differentiate what is happening even to the Palestinians fighting for nationhood? I mean, forget about humanitarian ceasefire. For Liberian government, whether now or in the past, I have no doubt it will have come to the same conclusion. They will say, yeah, America is our traditional ally. What really have you gained from being traditional ally to the US? They've been voting on Israel issue all along with the US. What so much investment has Africa and Israel put in Liberia so far? Israel has very good investment in all African countries. Like in South Africa, they got good investment there. How much do they have? We not remember them coming to protect, and maybe avoid the coup in 1985. That's the one we remember. I know there has been thing about Israeli having a lot of marijuana fine ground, or something like that. They were trying to cultivate some medicine or something. I mean, so for me, those are not positive investment by the Israeli government. They may have other investment in Liberia that I don't know about, but if we reflect on that, I think this was a catastrophic mistake by our foreign policy team to go with this whole traditional ally mentality. Let's just vote wherever United States go. United States act, and I mean, this is one of the reasons I don't like Donald Trump for many reasons. But when Trump said, look, I will say and do what I want to do because I was elected as president of the United States and I'm acting only to protect the U.S. interests. You can go do anything you want to do for your country too. Your people elected you to defend their interests. What do our government do for us in Africa? Many of our governments, they don't stand up. In our case, Liberia is actually a sad case. We don't have Liberian government standing up for Liberians. Right in Monrovia, Lebanese can abuse Liberians. It will be the Liberian police, the Liberian judicial system that will help the Lebanese to escape Liberia and go.
Thank you, Mr. Gombo.
That's one example.
So I just have one question for clarification, because I just went over all the UN resolutions. I don't see anywhere, except some obscure news, Chichipole news thing called GNN, but the UN resolutions for Israel, Liberia has consistently voted in line with the US. And even Louis Brown, I see an article here where he's denying George Weah's accusations. And I went back and looked at the issue with Jerusalem versus Tel Aviv, and Liberia voted in favor of moving the capital. So I don't know where y'all getting that other information. I just wanted to ask you if you have other information than what's on the UN website.
Thank you, Paul, for pointing that out. We will look into that follow. Let's come to the final issue on our menu here, which is Liberia places ban on the exportation of unprocessed rubber from Liberia. There is a Daily Observer article here that is reporting President Weah has issued Executive Order number 124 banning the exportation of a processed natural rubber. The executive order issued by the President, George Weah, mentioned that the rubber sector of Liberia has been greatly affected by abuse, misuse, and theft over the period. Therefore, in order to curb the situation, the government believes that further strategy is necessary so that proper policies can be developed and an appropriate institutional and regulatory framework can be established to curb retrogression, sustain the development of the industry, and stimulate growth. Carl, what is going on here? Too late?
Yes. So, interestingly enough, since the WEA administration has taken over, one of the first things that they did was have these aggressive financial relationships with India. You remember the whole Bali Island? We're going to call it Mahatma Gandhi Island, and we're going to have India's going to build another twin cities, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Well, Liberia's had a very interesting relationship with India. India is one of the largest rubber consumers in the world, has a huge demand for rubber. India produces rubber, but not enough. So they've got Malaysia and other countries that they go to obtain rubber. And recently, Upjid, Jetty, as we like to call him in Liberia, opened the first mass-scale rubber manufacturing plant in Margibi. That was literally just completed, I think, in September. And went there is about a $23 million facility, huge. And Upjit, of course, did not do this all out of his pocket. There's, the Indian government has helped to make sure that investment works. Why are they doing it? Well, raw materials being shipped out of Liberia through Firestone traditionally. So most of the rubber manufacturers or the growers of those small farmers and subsistence farmers that sell rubber to the major exporter, which is Firestone, that has a monopoly on exporting rubber, they wouldn't want to divert those resources to the manufacturing plant. And it's not happening organically or naturally. So people are still like, well, no, we get better deal if we sell it to Firestone, and that's who we've been selling it to, than if we go sell it to Jetty to process it. So WEA, of course, comes in and says, okay, we're going to have this executive order. Now you cannot export. Everybody got to go through Jetty and process it through Jetty. So it's one of these things where you're like, well, it would be a good policy, except you're doing it for corrupt reasons. And then you have this other weird thing that happens because Jetty is not a Liberian, it's not a Liberian-owned business. Nowhere did I find an environmental social impact assessment. How is this rubber manufacturing plant going to dispose of the toxic chemicals that they use to process the rubber? Of course, the Farmington River in Margibi. So everything's going into the water. There's no mitigation for environmental impact and the toxicity that is result from manufacturing rubber. None of the due diligence that governments are supposed to do when these kinds of organized manufacturing plants are erected in the country. Nobody cares. It's just, that manufacturing plant. We got to stop people from selling rubber to Firestone. We'll give it all to Jetty to process. If you go dig behind it, whose hands are also going to be benefiting? The situation is really, really frustrating, to say the least, when we just do things because of narrow interest and we don't look at bigger pictures with situations. And that's what it seems that is happening with this. There's a lot of danger, and unfortunately, executive orders can be reversed very quickly. I'm not saying that I'm against rubber manufacturing. I think we should be manufacturing our own rubber, but we should be doing so correctly. It shouldn't be through some form of coercion or corruption, and it definitely should not be done without us doing it in a sustainable and safe way. But right now, it's like this big rush. You build a facility, there's no mitigation, anything. It's just it's scary. But anyway, that's the reason we have did the executive order, is to support Jetty's business.
Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the executive order, and the executive order actually referenced a previous executive order that came out in 2008. Executive order, I think, number 16. And that executive order was issued because we had just gone through a civil war. The rebels had control over many of these rubber farms around the country. The entire sector was in chaos. So former President Salif issued that executive order to be able to put things under control. Because the rubber sector is one of the biggest sector in Liberia that contributes to job creation, right? It creates up to 80,000 jobs. in Liberia. In terms of export earning, around 61% of money that we get from exporting things out of Liberia comes from the rubber sector. So I think the previous executive order that was issued to be able to put that sector on its path to growth. And beyond that, since 2008, the government of Liberia has actually been investing money. When Mayor Jones was a central bank governor, up to $5 million was packaged for these farmers that were in the rubber sector. Even under the current government, they had given them some support, the Rubber Planters Association. And the LRA had been working with them to register these smaller rubber farmers for tax-paying purposes for us to be able to get money from them. So when I saw this executive order, the question was that, is it that the situation that existed in 2008 actually does exist today? So it means we're not able to solve this problem from 2008 until now. And then the issue is that, okay, I also read the article, and my point was that let me see what the people in the sector are saying, because every time a public policy comes out, you want to see people who are impacted by this policy. What are they going to say? And then when I read the article, I saw this head of the Rubber Development Fund, who was saying that this is a good policy. They've been advocating for the government of Liberia to even bring back this executive order. And my issue is it really good for you? Because it's almost like saying you don't have an option to take it out there. You have to, by force, sell it to people who are processing locally. And if you have that kind of situation, then you put them in a position where they can set the price, and it might not be in favor of the local farmers. So there's a lot of things happening here. My issue is that what is the analysis that the government of Liberia has done to inform this executive order, both on the job creation side, on the tax revenue side, and all of the other economic analysis that they should have done to inform this executive order? Because if it is done for a narrow interest, like I was saying, then it's going to harm us economically. It will affect job creation, it will affect the issue of our growth, and it will also affect the issue of government revenue that is coming in from this sector.
Exactly.
Amen.
This is Anthony. This is not an area of expertise of mine. So, for full disclosure, however, I read the article myself, and also listened to some radio analysis of it in Liberia, what people were calling in, what people were saying. My understanding is the rubber is not going. It's not about value addition per se in Liberia, like President Sully used to say. You know, you are exporting the raw material, raw rubber from Liberia. You know, you can't even produce a single flip-flop slipper or something like that. That's not, according to the people who know about this, who are speaking on the radio in Liberia today. One individual who grew up seeing his father work all his life in you know, Firestone and Lock and other places, talked about that the rubber, you do something with it in country. It's not a whole processing in terms of, like I said, value addition, making things locally in Liberia. But even the way they used to prep the rubber before exporting, they're not doing that anymore. They're just exporting it as it comes from the tree, essentially. And they're saying that is not good for Liberia, because the way this person said, you take it to the factory, there's another process that it go through, so that it coagulates in a way before it gets exported. And that process requires Liberians to work. So there's additional job, additional tax implications, like Thomas is saying, revenue implications, and so on. All of that, they've cut everything and jump over and just shipping it for others to do it in other countries, sending it to Malaysia and other places to do that preliminary processing even before manufacturing or doing anything with the rubber. That is what I gather from these people who spoke on the radio today. So I don't have any expertise in this. But if that is the case, then it sounds to me that the Liberian government is trying to protect local citizens who will get employed through this, and to also force the the rubber exporters, the major exporters. It sounds like the executive order is targeting the major exporters like Firestone and so on, not the local farmers. Because in the interest of the local farmers in this respect, if that's what they're doing with it. Again, I could be totally wrong. I just got it from what I read in the paper, what I listened to on the radio.
Thank you. Mr. Gonglo.
Yeah, what I was saying, I think the rubber sector is, as far as Liberia is concerned, is a little bit complicated with more than just conspiracy theory issue on this one here. I'm sorry, it's kind of complicated because if you look at some of the issues, I was at the Ministry of Labor when we had the first revision under the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf government. In fact, I was one of those that worked behind the scene to identify the different camps that would take the president there for visitation. There was a camp called Soweto, in Firestone. I was there. We went in those different camps to see what Firestone was doing in the inhumane conditions that workers live on. So on this issue, the goal of the Sirleaf government was for Firestone to not just take out the raw material, to have value addition. I remember Frida Tama was very strong on that will increase, in fact, the tax base of the Liberian government. And I also know, I think it's some open information there. When you traveling from, I believe, Kagata, do you research the Sada? There's a factory right there once you cross, I think, into Bonkante. There's a building, massive building that I believe Chinese or some Asian group built it there. That was meant to be a factory for processing rubber. I mean, the utensil into from rubber, based on rubber products, on the rubber and using rubber to produce utensil and other stuff, and use Liberia as a hub to export to Guinea, to other countries, Ivory Coast, and all that. My understanding is when they build that, the reason why not much activity is taking place in that area, I don't know how true it is that they can't find the raw material. Because what Firestone has done over years, in some instances, they pay money in advance, 10 years in advance to some rubber farmers to make them committed to them that they can sell to no buyer. Because Firestone noticed that there were competition coming in the market. Previously, had just been Firestone alone. There were other buyers now trying to buy to actually, export rubber. So they try to engage farmers in advance and pay money to them. So that sort of competition has been. So even when that process too started, my understanding is, and I hope this is true, my understanding is not much, they could not get the implements for production, the raw material. Most of the farmers could not sell to them because Firestone has engaged in years in advance. So this group, the strategy was, hey, we can start our own buying chain. We can also support farmers through the same means to do it. So Jetty started this big project. Where was he going to get his? Firestone see Jetty as a competitor. They're going to double down and get more farmers committed to them. Now they're not going to sell to Jetty. So the government should decide. For me, regardless of the motive, over 100 years as a country, we've been fighting for small-scale industry. If in addition or in a process of the latex that will allow LRA to also collect another set of revenue and also create jobs based on even income tax for other group of Liberians, I think it's a good thing. It's a small step, but I'm not even happy with that small step. I am of the opinion, if our president of Liberia today, I will actually give a 1-year notice to Firestone or to any rubber exporting group in Liberia that you have 1 year to have this level of process to your raw material. Otherwise, you're not going to take it out of the country. When we have any factory comes in that will produce latex or condom and all that stuff, we require you to sell maybe 40% of your material, of your latex to that company. We'll do it because we have to have some sort of manufacturing taking place in the country. I don't care whether it's an industry or what. But
Mr. Gongo, so
where are economists? Come answer us why that's disastrous. Mr. Kane, please come in.
The point is, for you to improve competitiveness in the sector and get the best out of it, is just introduce the competition. Because if you allow a jetty to open the rubber factory, and he's going to now demand and challenge Firestone for what they are buying, then eventually the farmers are going to benefit because the two of them will be competing on the product. And if they are also exporting it out of the country, if Jetty happens to buy higher than what is being paid to those people that are taking it through the border from Lofa and other places, because in the article they are even saying that the Ministry of Commerce and I think one other ministry in 30 days, they should set up a mechanism. Yeah, they should set up a mechanism to provide alternative market for those people who are in rural areas. So you are essentially saying to those farmers that don't take it across the border again, you have to sell it here locally.
Which is
you've already introduced the competition, but then you come back to regulate the sector to compare.
Over-regulating.
Over-regulate it. So it's like you are undermining your own competition. Just allow Jetty to open it, allow the price mechanism to play its role. Whoever provides the higher price, the farmers sell to them. Don't tell the farmer sell it locally or don't export it.
No, so Thomas, the question I'll ask is, do you have any knowledge on that factory that stands between Mangibi and Bonkante right across the bridge?
I know. I have an idea about it, and what I heard previously is also the line that you were saying, that the Chinese wanted to do manufacturing. A lot of backdoor negotiation took place, and eventually they did not move forward. So if Jetty has managed to break through the market, just allow the market to move on because competition is already there. But why do you allow the competition and then come with the regulation?
That flame competition in Liberia. What they've done, because many of the rural farmers, my father has a rural farm. It's not a big farm, but at least he does have a rural farm. We have a rural farm. So, but at least we are not one of those captive farms for Firestone buyers. So they actually do engage farmers, give them loan in advance, sometimes 10 years. In fact, they give the ball rubber or whatever for sealing. They give it to farmers. Okay, this is Firestone ball. We'll give it to you.
Yeah. So let me help you out. Let me explain what that was.
It's another way of stopping competition.
Yeah. So what Collegbo is describing is a form of sharecropping. And Firestone introduced this in a kind of what Collegbo was saying is actually correct. It was a form of sharecropping that Firestone introduced. It became a really huge issue in the 1950s and 60s, really, where they would now, besides having the plantation that they controlled, they also took over the economy, the entire country's economy, where most people, instead of growing food, they started growing this cash crop to supply Firestone. One of the ways that Firestone could control the farmers was to keep them indebted to Firestone. This is classic sharecropping this is what America did in their agricultural sector all throughout the South and the Midwest for almost a century, which is this sharecropping, which is a form really of slavery and exploitation of labor, where you lend someone something and they constantly owe you and they're never able to pay you fully for that which they owe you, so they're constantly indebted to you. And the debt that they're required to give to Firestone is this rubber. This is classic American agricultural exploitation. Firestone implementing in Liberia. So Collegbo is correct. But I don't believe that the way to correct that is to overregulate. What you do is you make that kind of forced predatory lending illegal. And you stop it there and you protect your farmers, you protect your citizens from that kind of predatory relationship. That is the correct way government is supposed to come in and regulate. Not to say you cannot export raw materials, you must sell all your things to only the one manufacturing company in the country. It's dangerous to do that. Yes, what they should do, Collegbo, is they should say these arrangements that Firestone has are unlawful.
let me get to that.
1 minute, answer.
Yeah.
Even if that does not become unlawful, for the fact that you have competition, Firestone can no longer go to a farmer and say, let's go into this arrangement, because they have an
The arrangements already exist, though, Thomas.
Right. Yeah,
the arrangements exist. So and they are unlawful. The government can step in and tell someone that what they're doing is predatory. It happens in the United States. It happens everywhere. Predatory lending and exploitation of your citizens is something that the government is supposed to protect you against.
I understand. The point I'm making is that if this already exists, the competition in the industry can be able to provide farmers an alternative not to enter that kind of arrangement.
What about those that are in the arrangements now? How do you fix that?
That is where.
I'm listening.
That is where. What if they get income higher from the other alternatives? They are able to pay their debt.
Because you are not allowed to sell to the other person.
He's not understanding the situation.
I understand, but
the government has to come in and protect those citizens from those predatory relationships. So that's what happens.
Let me say this to you. The reason why
I have to come to Dr. Do here. I don't want you to be watching the movie.
I think we can.
Well, can I? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Dr. Do.
Yeah.
What I want to see from the government policy standpoint, manufacturing is something I think the government should encourage, because we know it will lead to the creation of jobs in Liberia, and the rubber being a huge sector. Has there been a policy from government for things to be manufactured in Liberia with rubber? Has there been? If not, why is stopping it?
I think it has to do with that first that first concession agreement Liberia signed with Firestone back in 2,000 years ago, and that became the model. And meaning our concessions are based on the model that we signed with Firestone. Everybody comes in, take the same model, and say, okay, we make some arrangement. But definitely, I was part of the discussion. I was part of this company in Maryland from the beginning to the end, the negotiation process, and they start producing and all of that. Kavala Rubber Corporation, they bought it from the Belgians, and from the beginning, they put in their case, they say, oh no, we want to do we want to do some change. We're not going to take rubber, natural rubber, like Firestone was doing. That was back 2012. Because they were going to take rubber from Maryland into Cote d'Ivoire, and they didn't have the capacity to transform all of that, so they had to build a factory in Maryland to do it. But it created something like 150 jobs. So I think, coming with a regulation, as you say, is over-regulating a system that's already broken, that you really have no control over. So how do you stop the monopoly of Firestone on buyers? How you break down the market so that, no product goes up, but you have to have a system in place of transformation. You have to have market. You have to have a process. You have to be sustainable. The process has to be sustainable. You can't just come up and say, no, it's not going to go up. What are you going to do with it when people pile up 10,000 tons of rubber in your backyard and it smells like, you don't want to smell it? So what are you going to do with it if people pile it up? Whose interest is being protected when you say that? Is it Firestone again? Do you want to force people to sell their rubber to them because not everybody has, transformative capacity? Or is it, some new competitive, competitor coming on the market? So we have to look at a lot of aspects of it. I think, definitely exporting rubber as it is part of this colonial economy that we got from Firestone back from 1920 something. And as long as it goes on, as long as you don't break down monopoly, and Liberian are funny or something that, about Firestone. This always say Firestone is an American company, you can't touch it. No, it's Japanese.
Yeah, it's same difference, by the way.
Yeah, you know, we always say, oh, yeah, it's an
SHGA
American
people,
company.
same 06 and 7.
Yeah, yeah, they're smart. They changed, they bought it, but they said no, we're gonna keep it in Akron. You know, so we don't want to, you know, Americans.
Because it's Liberia. So
yeah,
I mean,
they can, yeah, because it's Liberia.
This monopoly without any manufacturing component.
Exactly, they can pass through as long as you
out of fires to anybody in the sector, you know, to encourage production in Liberia. It's denying Liberians of.
Well, if you don't get out of a soon conglomerate monopoly, the Roberts process would be the same thing.
Guys, I will say this to you. For the short term, I was paying government. For the Firestone, I was not part of the negotiation, but I was part of the president's visit to Firestone. I sat in the room when she talked with the CEO. I can tell you this much. Even prior to our visit, the different negotiation discussion on Firestone team at the Ministry of Labor and in other conference room, Liberian officials sanctioned themselves before even the US, before Firestone team can come in. They say yes. You know, there is a 1976 agreement that Turbo negotiated with Firestone. In fact, some people suggest that it is that agreement that caused Turbo to be overthrown.
But it was started with AB.
So they believed Turbo was getting radical on Firestone. And Firestone said, no, we can't keep you here. We're going to get rid of you. So there is that belief in God, in Liberian government official cycle when you're talking with Firestone. In some instances, the American government officials even had. I remember, I'm not going to call the ambassador name because he's a powerful, they got powerful influence. But I remember, ambassador, there was an American company helped trying to build, were part of the contractor to build the new American embassy. They came to the Ministry of Labor, and I was on the committee to review application for work permit. And I said, no, these guys are Togolese. The skills they have, because they are building one of the new embassies in Togo. So they were bringing the same crew to Liberia. I said, no, electrician, plumber, we have Liberian plumbers. We cannot give them work permit. I saw the American ambassador walk to my office to come sit and talk to me. That you got Chinese. In fact, actually, this show is a Chico workers are sweeping in the street with broom before they lay the asphalt. Do they have what you give them work permit? Now we have other Africans come and say, Madam, I'm not here to argue with that one. These people, they are Africans, they are eco-citizens, but we're not giving them work permit. This company must hire Liberian electrician. The only way we'll do will have a counterpart system. If the company can agree to, but this is in fact not an American company, it's an American company, but then has worked in Togo and the brother. And the ambassador was arguing for them with the ministry to issue their work permit on the application, untouched. And we said no. So a lot of stuff happening because Liberian government official, anytime it comes to like America, we just give us say like America interest. You know.
Yeah, and I think that is sad. Imagine if the Liberian government could have negotiated with the Firestone administration or management, to put it right, you know, to talk about a manufacturing component. Imagine how many jobs that will create.
Yeah, but right? Actually, was it 1989? They're producing gloves, surgical gloves, and condoms in Liberia. Somebody was producing that. Yeah, 89. Yeah, they're producing. Yeah, there's
right. So we had during the 40s, especially picking up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, we had a lot of manufacturing in Liberia. We manufactured clothes, shoes, all kinds of products. Paint was produced in Liberia. We've had a lot of manufacturing. We used to export rice, right? We had so many things. So we still manufacture a little bit, but I mean, before the war, we had a lot of the whole Somalia drive was full of manufacturing companies
battery
and
factory,
facilities.
sugar, and all that.
So we produce things. We have made a lot of things that we no longer make in Liberia. We shouldn't, forget that this is something that we've achieved before. But we have to be careful, and we need to make sure that this process of helping our economy isn't done for narrow, selfish reasons, because it could end up being a form of economic sabotage. Forcing everybody to sell their rubber to Jetty isn't progress. Is not what the government's supposed to do. I like what Mr. Khanna was saying about the need for competition, and that is what grows the market. This is what we're all trained to understand. Government's supposed to regulate as far as it goes to protect its citizens from exploitation and unfair lending situations, like things like sharecropping, like what Kaleba was describing. We can't act like we don't, but like everybody ate their school fees in Liberia and people don't know what it's supposed to do. We already understand how we should proceed in these situations. And the environmental factor is a big thing. We're not doing things the way we should, period. And so it's like, oh, my man, we'll get something for Jetty. Let's just do that one. Yeah, everybody just jump on it haphazardly, without any thought or planning, without any type of assessments done. It's dangerous, and it's irresponsible governance.
Thank you.
If I can just,
let me end on this. If you look at that, under President Salih, under President Weah, under President Sawyer, under President Doe, or whatever. In fact, I don't want to talk about Doe time. I don't want to talk about Sawyer time, because Sawyer was not even in control of Firestone. So, but let's look at this. The Farmington River, at least under Salih, the most popular internationally recognized government. There was pollution of the Farmington River by Firestone or process. EPA did work on those things. There was noise in the newspaper. Nothing. So long it is Firestone in violation of our law.
Listen, when it comes to environmental degradation, I was in Liberia. I was executive director for Coastal Inland Waterways. I will absolutely condemn the Environmental Protection Agency under what's her name, with Councillor Anya Vohiri, and Nat Blamo. Them did a horrible disservice to Liberia. If I had the power to prosecute them for gross negligence of duty, I would do so. So you can't tell me about water pollution, because I'm with you. I even louder than you on that issue. And it wasn't Firestone alone. Even these EISA and all these things that they put on paper, no one enforced it. Nobody, even when they would go to follow up, it would just be to extort a few $1,000s so they could look the other way. That's more the abuse they've done to the Liberian people. And God only knows what kind of lead poisoning and mercury poisoning our children are experiencing, birth defects, cognitive and developmental issues in our young people as a result of this negligence. We really want to get serious here. The type of reparations that are owed to the Liberian people from these corporations that the government fails to monitor. It's extraordinary. So yes, you even have to go that far. But today, George Weah is president. Today, they're the ones that are being negligent. That's why we're talking about him today. Tomorrow, when that JMB, we'll talk about him too.
Thank you, Carl. And Thomas, your final point.
Just a few points. I think you were mentioning the issue of, okay, this is a factor that we do production. We need to pay attention to that. That is extremely important. Because, for instance, even if you look at the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, the industry that is in the name of that ministry, they hardly do anything towards it, because we really don't have any good strategy on how we are going to industrialize, which is very important for our growth. So the piece of allowing this company to come and add value to our rubber product is not in question. It's very good. It will create jobs. It will give us additional taxes and all of that. My point, and what we're saying about this executive order, is that you are basically like transferring the monopoly from one person. Say, for instance, if you are targeting Firestone, you say, okay, Firestone, don't buy it, but let Jetty buy it. So it's almost like you are creating another monopoly when you're trying to solve a problem. So the point is, just put the competition in place and allow the competition to flow by itself. on the issue of these environmental issues, the factory that Jetty built is just on the road to Kakata. It's very close. I think when Kakata grows in the next couple of years, it's even going to get close to that place. But I wouldn't say that perhaps there is no environmental impact analysis that was done. The EPA will always go and do it. And like you were saying, Carl, there's
no EISA for the project. I checked.
Okay. If you check, then that's okay. But my experience is they will just go and do it and check the box. Can you imagine that quite recently in Cape Mount, there was an issue where people said there was pollution in a river and fish.
It's still happening today. It's still happening. It hasn't been corrected.
I get your point. But the point is that the EPA went and they did a study and said that there was nothing happening. And they allowed the company to move forward. So I'm just reinforcing the point that you made.
Who's head of your EPA?
Thank you. Let's go to the callers here. Time is fast spent. We have a caller on the line. Livingstone, you've been waiting, and thanks for your patience there. Let's go to the issue right away.
Yeah, thank you, great show, man. Thanks to the panelists. For me, I'm just going to speak about this sanction thing. I've been through all the sanctions, and I welcome it. It's not just for the outgoing government. I think it's the incoming government too. Is something to learn from. That in case they do the same, and they will get affected. Look, Javon Kochi and Simon and all the guys that can come out and have a press conference. At the end of the day, when they go home in the night and it's sick, they don't want to be going through that stress, that depressed. They'll be depressed and worried. They know it's not easy. So, people try to talk about that child. I understand. But you got to think about the other children, the Liberian children that died, from the corruption from these guys. Especially, the roads, some road fund and other things that these guys corrupt from that cause pregnant women getting stuck in the mud and dying with a child. You got to think about all that. Because of corruption, they lead to all that. No medication, in these hospitals. When you carry a child there or yourself, because there's no medication, it causes you to lose your life. So we should be thinking about all that when people corrupt and then they come after them and their children. Why the children living in America are benefiting, just get a benefit, the best of hospitals and school they go to and get children in low-fi, grand school in Salo who get better, even go to school. We got to think about that. That's why corruption is not good, and we should speak against it. And I welcome it wholeheartedly. Thank you for the show.
Lomo, thank you for calling. You make an excellent point there. Corruption is stopping the construction of the roads, and the accident alone, killing a lot of young people. That is a very, very good point there. And thank you. So I see that he was or has been the only caller. So we will come back to the panelists here for your closing statement, at least a minute or two at most each. Let's start with Dr. Duke. Oh, people said the big bang can be the last to speak, right? Dr. Duke, you don't mind? Oh, I think Dr. Duke, you are muted.
I think the issues that we talked about tonight are very important. These sanctions, about some officials of the government show at what point, at what the magnitude of corruption around George Weah, and playing around and say, "Oh, I'm not guilty," or it's because I was doing this because of this company. No, everybody knows. Liberians have been long waiting to fight corruption. They talk about it, but now I think the administration that is coming on, if he wants to be taken seriously, will have to go ahead. And also, it will be good for the other people also who have been accused and say, okay, I want to clear my name. Let the US bring the proof, let it go to court, and let the Liberian court system take over. And then we'll know if you're corrupt or not. Regarding the rubber issue, I think, we have to get out of the colonial economic system, the colonial economy that started with the first agreement that we signed with Firestone is still there and is still serving as a model for investment in concession agreements. So as long as we have not moved that, we have not changed that rubber is not wealth unless you transform it. Iron ore is not wealth unless you transform it. And water is not wealth unless you transform it. Why do we import water from Lebanon? You know, simple questions. Why do we import water from Lebanon? So we have a lot of work to do. And I hope the government coming in, maybe not do it in 24 hours, but at least put people in a direction where they can see the potentials and the capacities and everything that is possible to achieve in the country. That we don't need to go out begging IMF, World Bank, this and that. No, just what you're sending on. That's
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
All right. Tomas?
Yeah, very, very good show. I mean, on the issue of the sanctions, like I said, everyone is going to feel it differently. We might say that people who have been elected, they got sanctioned and then they went and got elected. But as consciousness level grows in Liberia over the next 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 years, it might just be very difficult for them to get re-elected. So even though they might think today that nothing is happening to them, they can move freely, they can go to work and go back home, it might haunt you in the future. Also, if the prosecution does take place, there are different ways it's going to harm you. You are already harmed by being excluded or banned for life from coming to the US. Also, your financial activities, you might face some challenges. Like Ahmed was saying from the beginning, you can't move money easily. So much of the stolen wealth that you have stolen and you thought that you could do business with it after your government leaves power, you might face some challenges. And if you bought houses in Dubai and other places, how are those resources going to reach you if people can't do business with you? So regardless of what it is, these sanctions are going to hit these individuals. And like I said, people who have these careers, and many of them sometimes, like Samuel Twa, he said he's 53. You still have 10, 15, 20 years that you can work. And if you can work for that time, except if you have stored enough money, but if the money is not much, it's going to finish. And then the point is, where are you going to make money from if you can work? So it's going to hit them. The point of on the issue of Liberia will have to take this up, because if they say these people are corrupt, in many instances, it might not have been the US money that is stolen. It is the Liberian people money that is stolen, for which people have suffered over the past 5 years. This is why I think the new government should move ahead and really be able to investigate this to find which Liberian laws were violated, under which the prosecutions can actually take place. And like one of the callers said, it's good. Everybody is saying today is the outgoing government, and there are many questions about why they didn't do it to the early government, because the Global Magnitsky Act, I think, was signed in 2016. So those who serve in that government may have survived. But if you come into the Joe Biden government now and you think you come in still the way Samora Wolukoli then deal with domestic taxes, the US will be waiting for you. And they will deal with you the same way they deal with these previous officials. I also think it's a good thing for our democracy, because we're getting to a point where we're getting tired. We just keep electing these people, they don't change. And then we go back to election. So this kind of thing that can change behavior is a bit important on the sanctions. On the issue of the vote at the UN, I think what we need to do as a country is to just improve our economic well-being. That way we can become a country that can be sovereign. If not, we just have to go the way countries that are supporting us will go. And on the rubber issue, I think this is an executive order. When a new government comes, let them review it, do an economic analysis of it, and then take a decision as to what to do about it. Thank you.
Mr. Gonglo.
Well, Dennis, I think this has been a good show. What a nice to come back on Tough Talking Thursday after a brief stay away. But no, essentially,
was it because of the campaign you stay away?
No.
Right. Go ahead.
It was work related. But no, on the sanction, I still maintain my opinion on this. That you know, if these officials have been put on sanction, they have been largely re-elected. Um, they have stolen money with them. Like the United States government saying, if they continue to live better and nothing is done um, to show accountability, some in some form in the country, maybe 5 years from now or 6 years from now, Liberians will say, no, but American sanction is useless because you put the people on the sanction, they get we elect them to offices, they get paid from our government tax dollars, our government money, because all of those we elected are going to be paid for the next, some of them 9 years, some of them 6 years probably. In fact, no, all of the nine, those who got elected 9 years, Brain Johnson, McGay, Bill Trower, 9 years. Okay, so for the next 9 years, we're going to be paying them. If they have to fly to Ghana, they are government official, we're going to pay whatever benefit is due them because there ain't no violation. So I hope the incoming government will take action that is deemed appropriate in their own interest to survive. I think they should do it. If it includes prosecuting them, they should prosecute them. They should take to the court. But to the best of my knowledge, I was just chatting with a friend, and he was saying to me that he has not heard of U.S. government partnering with another government to prosecute someone in that country on sanction issue. If they take something serious, they usually will file for extradition of that person to the United States and they prosecute the person within the U.S. court system. But if they go in other countries, particularly in the case of Liberia, our judicial system is something also to go by. Without having a crystal ball to look through, if you go to court today, my best guess is that we might even end up having everybody exonerated because we know the court system is what it is. No, I mean, but I will end it right there.
Thank you. Carl?
The U.S. cannot extradite criminals from other countries for committing crimes that they did not commit on U.S. soil. So that extradition is when you commit crimes on U.S. soil and escape to another country, you're extradited to the United States to face charges. Sanctions are for crimes that you've committed, usually transnational crimes, and U.S. is basically saying, don't come to our country. To talk about the Israeli solidarity, Liberia-Israeli solidarity, buffoonery that we are accustomed to. George, in July of this year, on the 5th of July of this year, received a very prestigious award from the Israeli state, which is called the Friends of Zion Award. And this award is given to heads of states, for world leaders who have gone above and beyond in support of the Jewish state. So they gave this to him in July because he has gone above and beyond, whatever that means, meaning doing absolutely extraordinary things, above average things to support the Jewish state. So to say that this person who has received personally a Friends of Zion award, which has not been given, as far as I know, to any of the current US presidents, but it was given to George Weah of Liberia, that he's just voting because America voted, I think is a stretch. He received this prestigious award because he believes in the Zionist agenda. He's a frequent visitor to Israel, and he has absolutely stood in solidarity with Israel's crimes against the Palestinian people. And many, many, many Liberians foolishly support that mindset. They believe that that's the correct thing. So we shouldn't sit here and pretend that Liberians generally do not think that the people in Israel are the biblical Israelis, and therefore, if they support them blindly, they're supporting, they're somehow, supporting the relatives of Jesus or something. This is a reality. So I just wanted to emphasize that because I hear a lot of people saying, oh no, They just mindless and dumb and just voting with America. No, they have an agenda. It is a horrible agenda. We don't want to admit it, but we need to address it. And one of the problems is the poor education system in our country is producing people who think against their own interests, who think in ways that do not benefit them. This is one of the products of miseducation. So if we don't accept it and deal with it and try to correct this phenomenon, we're going to have another generation of George Weahs who think that the people stepping on their necks are the heroes.
Well, that will be the final word on today's edition of Tough Talking Thursday. Very big thanks to the panelists for coming and putting all the time to contribute for our viewers who were here to listen. The song that closes the broadcast says, "We are all Liberians," and that is closing up right now. Until we see you again, thank you for us here at Focus on Liberia. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home.